Hi, everybody. It's Susan again, and here we're going to talk about Mars in opposition to Pluto while it's retrograding in the last degree, or actually, technically, the second degree of Leo. And I have a few things to say also about Cancer, and then we'll look sign by sign what this might represent for you in your natal chart. Now, when we go sign by sign, it's always going to be valid for your ascendant, sun, and moon sign. So I'm getting on my soapbox here because the moon seems to have fallen out of favor very recently, maybe the last year or two. Somehow the moon suddenly seems unimportant in astrology. And in fact, the moon represents the mind, as we're going to see when we talk about Cancer. It represents your emotions, it represents your body, it represents the aspect of yourself that feels comfortable or secure. And that's pretty darn important. And so often, when there's a transit that's based on the moon, you feel that intensely, even though it might actually feel more personal, more interior, on an external level that can actually influence you and your relationship to home, or you and your relationship to your mother. So definitely listen for your moon sign. Um, and also the sun, which is your purpose and your career and your identity and your consciousness. And also listen to the rising sign, which will show you where in your life these things are manifesting. So I'm going to get down off my soapbox now, and we'll start to talk about Mars and its opposition to Pluto. So this is happening exactly on the 3rd of January. Whenever I do my videos, I try and show the astrology as clearly as possible so you can follow along and learn, hopefully. And by the way, I'm still teaching a course coming up on the 12th of January. We're going to meet every Sunday for 10 Sundays, with the exception of 2 Sundays within 3 months. And you're very welcome to join. I'd love to show you my way of looking at astrology. So if you have a good basic understanding of astrology, this is for you. If you're an absolute beginner, you'd need to brush up a little bit before we can get down to business. I'll put the details of that below here as well. I always forget to talk about it, so good that I'm remembering here. Anyway, so all the details of every chart will always be found in the corners of the chart. In my software, it's in the upper left-hand side. In some softwares, it's going to be on another side, but it doesn't matter. You can always look outside the circle and look for the details that I'm talking about at any time. So here we have the 3rd of January, 2025, and we see that this is at 6:24 a.m. and 16 seconds Universal Time. And I'm always using Universal Time because you're watching from all over the world. So you have to adjust for your own place, your own time, space, and dimension. And notice that this is tropical. It says right on the screen, it's tropical whole sign astrology. So you can do at least half of the job by paying attention to what the screen tells you as much as what I'm telling you. And you don't need to ask the question then in the comments whether I'm doing tropical or Vedic astrology. And also, I just don't want, let me get back on my soapbox one more minute because we're talking about Mars here. So let's get down to business. If you have a problem with tropical astrology and you think that it's a modern invention, then you really need to do better research. Tropical astrology is the foundation of astrology. It is the movement of the sun, the tropos of the sun over the equator, and it tells time, basically. It is the indicator of the seasons, of the days, and with reference to the moon and its trajectory through the movement, the lunar phases, that's telling us the months as well, and the months of each year. And so it's not some new agey woo-woo nonsense. It's actually the frame of reference for sidereal astrology, which is based in the stars. Also legitimate, nothing better or worse about each system. And if you go in my comments section and start to dismiss what I'm saying, or you actually insult me or put me down for using tropical astrology and tell me that you only know true sky astrology and that what I'm saying is wrong, you will simply be deleted from the comments and blocked from the channel. So bye. And let's make that clear, because it's your ignorance that is making you get on your soapbox. And let's jump into that, because here we are with Mars in Leo. And Mars in Leo can often be quite arrogant and dogmatic. Now, I'm not saying if you have Mars in Leo that you're arrogant and dogmatic. It's the archetype of Mars in Leo. And that's something that we need to pay attention to globally right now. as well as personally. So we'll get into the nitty-gritty of the personal details in a moment, but at least globally, we really want to be careful what's going on around us. Because although this is happening on the 3rd of January, the opposition is exact on the 3rd of January, but it's actually in orb for many, many days on either side. Certainly the whole first week of January and actually the last week of December. But I'm going to give it a broader orb because it's Mars moving so slowly that it remains in orb pretty much all of, I'm going to say right up until the end of January, because we can give it a 3-degree orb when it's going so slowly. And Pluto anyway moves very, very slowly as well. But let's say at least till the middle of January, this is extremely potent. Mars also is the ruler of the North Node at this point. And so we're also looking to what the North Node is doing in terms of the direction that we're taking. And if we're talking about this dogmatism, or this fervent belief in something that actually shuts down the mind, or that blocks us from learning, or that makes us think that we already know, don't tell me, or that we have the best idea, the best insight, or whatever, this causes serious disruption. And a mind that is like that is a dead mind. It's a mind that's decaying, not open and flourishing. And we see that all through the world. We see that in so many ways, where violence is erupting based on what we are convinced is true, what we're convinced is right, without any reflection on what might be true or right for other people. So the Mars energy can be very intense. Of course, it's the representation of aggression, assertion, obviously violence, war, and all of the challenging emotions like anger, hatred, and resentment, and so on. But Mars is necessary. We need Mars in our lives to get us out of bed, to do things, to feel this inspiration and passion towards what we're interested in. Now, when Mars is retrograde, that may not be so clear, and it may not be so outer directed either. So there may be some opportunity here, especially on an individual level, to reconsider any dogmatic ideas or any certainty around what is the right action and what I need to be doing. And of course, Leo represents the sun. It's ruled by the sun rather, and it represents the everything the sun represents, which is our consciousness, our ego, let's say the individuated self, or the idea of an individuated self. And it's also everything to do with what we feel is our purpose, our mission in life. And when Mars is in Leo, there's a mission. We have a mission. We're on a mission, except that when it's retrograde, it's not so clear. The mission might be questioned. We might be questioning our ideas about what it was that we thought was so inspiring. And we might start to doubt our capacity as well as the idea itself. Now, as Mars is ruling that North Node in Aries, only just another week after this, and the North Node in Aries is going to shift into Pisces at the 29th degree of Pisces on the 11th of January. But for this time, we see that Mars is forming a trine, really powerful trine to the North Node that it's ruling. And so what we're contemplating here is part of the direction that we're taking in this moment. And that's a direction that is a longer term prospect, because we also have the sextile to Pluto, the opposition to Mars, and of course then the trine to the south node from Pluto. And as we saw, that creates this mystic rectangle. I mentioned this in my new moon video for the 30th of December. We had that Capricorn new moon, which also contains this mystic rectangle, because it's in orb for many weeks actually around this time. And this is something that tells us that there's a special energy at this time, that there's a potential for something to become more realized, let's say, or more in our awareness, is something that we can learn from this moment. And this retrograde can help us as long as we don't react from this visceral place, where we react from this belief that we know it all, that we're in the right and everybody else is wrong, that true sky astrology is the only valid astrology and no other astrology can describe the world, as if this were not anyway a human-made paradigm. These are paradigms. These are not absolute truths, people. We're dealing with something that is one of millions of ways of seeing life and seeing how humanity unfolds. if you don't want astrology, you can find something else, throw runes or, tarot card, whatever. Just look at the crows in the sky. You'll find all kinds of omens to tell you information. And all of them are going to inform you on one or another level, but it doesn't make the one or another wrong. Again, I'm sorry, I've been back down off my soapbox. It's this Mars thing. I think it's Mars. So I just wanted to point this out, that this mystic rectangle can be something that is favorable to our awakening, personal awakening. Potentially, ideally, we get to a place where there's a critical mass of awakening. And I don't count on that. So I focus on my own awakening, and I focus on helping others awaken one by one, because honestly, we don't have much control over what other people do. And we really do need to take care of our own interpretation of the world and our own way of manifesting life. So this is also Mars in Leo. And Mars, of course, got to Leo on the 4th of November. So we've had Mars in Leo for a couple of months already at this point. And it stationed retrograde at the 6th of December, and that was at 6 degrees of Leo. So it's only moved 5 degrees in 1 month. It's very, very slow at this point. And when it moves into Cancer, it's going to continue this really slow motion. So this tension with Mars is going to be with us really until March, maybe even into April. And so we need to start to think about it consciously so that we can make the most out of it. So the Buddha said that the world is on fire. So there we go. We've got the sun as a representation of Leo, or the ruler of Leo, representing the sun. And the Buddha said that the world is on fire because our senses are on fire. So that's our individual senses. So it's not that there's something out there that's happening, but that we ourselves are not taming our senses, that we're lashing out based on what our desires are. That's another Mars word. I desire something. And the desire comes with this feeling of, I need to do something about it. I need to take action. Mars is this masculine principle of reaching out and taking action and accumulating something to then bring it into Cancer, put it on the fire at home and feed the family. And so this Mars energy is in all of us. It's not it's not those people out there who are angry. It's that we're not aware of the anger in us, or we're not aware of the aggression in us, or we're not aware of the let's say the desire for attention, or the desire for action that other people seem to be projecting outwards. So we tend to hide that. We might sublimate it, especially when Mars is retrograde. And this might be true of you if you have Mars retrograde in your chart. That depends on a lot of different things. So it's not just because you have Mars retrograde, and it's certainly not just because you have Mars retrograde in Leo, but it would need to be reconfigured to the other planets in your chart to really be able to interpret that. So it's not one or another thing that tells us all about who we are. But just as a let's say an archetype of the moment, let's think about this from the inner experience of anger and frustration and emotionality, especially because Mars is going backwards into Cancer. And when Mars gets into Cancer, there's a lot of emotionality. We saw Mars in Cancer in September and October, and we saw extreme emotionality. And people who were, so up until the 4th of November, or basically up until the US elections, the people who were extremely emotional about their team, one side or another on the whichever team you were on in terms of the US elections. And to the extent that they caused themselves harm by being extremely emotional. So the shadow side of Mars is repressing and denying this anger and using alcohol and drugs to numb the anger and the pain as well. And it can be cruel, it can be ruthless, it can be heartless. And now I want to talk about the heart, actually, because Leo also, of course, astrology comes in many, many layers of meaning. And one of them is to identify parts of the body that each sign represents. And Leo represents the heart. And it's the heart that represents courage and this capacity to just radiate like a child, radiate joy, radiate happiness, radiate one's creative impulse, that sort of lifeblood. And the heart is really central to who we are, and it supports the mind. So the mind is the moon, which is Cancer, but the moon also has an affinity to the heart, but not the physical heart. If we looked at this from the chakras, for example, Leo would be more like the Anahata chakra, which is like the central heart chakra, the fourth chakra, or the heart chakra, which means unstruck sound. It's the sound of of the heartbeat that doesn't, it's not caused by something hitting it. It's caused from within its own energy. And then if we get to the heart that's Cancer, that is represented by the emotional body or by the mind and the memory body and by our interior feelings, that's more like the Hridaya chakra. So the Hridaya is like more like the cave of the heart. Hrid means heart, but it's not the same energy of the heart that Leo contains. It's the inner knowing of the heart, if you like. The cave of the heart is what many yogis meditate on. You would sit and meditate on the space behind the heart. And this would be more the Cancer version of that. And of course, Cancer represents the digestive system and the lungs and the chest that it shares with Gemini, and the digestive system that it shares in part also with Virgo. But it's really all about our emotional body. And the first thing that shuts down when our emotions are very strong is our digestion as well. So when we're working with these notions of feelings and emotions, and especially as Mars is retrograding through the two signs that are ruled by the luminaries, which really define us. Like I said at the beginning, be sure to listen for your moon, be sure to listen for your sun, and then, of course, the ascendant. But those luminaries describe so much of the human experience. And they're also what we can relate to in a very visceral way when we look up in the sky. So in the daytime, we see the sun. In the nighttime, we see the moon. Sometimes we also see the moon in the daytime, depending on the lunar phase and the time of year. But it's this energy of me, how I feel, how I am represented. And now Mars is coming back in there. We need to have more personal emotional awareness, because no doubt there's going to be some kind of event. There are many to choose from, but there will likely be some kind of event or many events happening around this time where we're really not going to feel safe. It might feel very threatening. And I invite you to take good care of your heart, because when we're in fear, which is part of the Pluto opposition to Mars, when we're in fear or there's a feeling of violence or there's this feeling of disruption, we shut down our awareness, we shut down our capacity to really think, and we go into this kind of animal instinct, which is where we get this negativity bias. It's this ancient fear which can protect us. It's like, oh, that looks dangerous, that looks bad, I'm going to run the other way. So that can be quite a lifesaver. It's not to say that we should shut that down, but just to say that we will go into that feeling, even sitting in front of the television or sitting in front of a YouTube video, hearing there's a lot of drama and a lot of fear mongering going on at the moment. And I have to say, there's a lot of clickbait as well. So you be discerning where there's a lot of attention on something that excites the emotions. You take a moment and take a beat, as the saying goes, take a beat, take a heartbeat, and just really reflect. Is this person going to tell me something that is real and true, or are they just getting me to click and watch what they're saying? So you can start to become more discerning, and that's a Leo quality as well, discernment. That's also a Virgo quality, but Leo has the discernment of the heart. Virgo has the discernment of the mind. And when the heart is telling you something, you really want to listen. But if you're fully cluttered with your emotional baggage and you haven't let go of feelings, and you haven't let go of fear, and you haven't let go of also even old ideas, and it's that Leo, Mars in Leo, I know it all, don't tell me kind of energy. then you will lack your inner intuition. Your heart won't be guiding you properly. You'll be in a conflict. And when there's an inner conflict between the psyche and the heart, there is anger and there's frustration, and it'll either be directed towards yourself or it'll be projected outwards. So we see an enormous amount of the projection side of that. We don't necessarily notice the inner anger. It's good to be in tune with that, and try and tune into your own, especially. So this is definitely a time to really reflect on what triggers you, what gets you really upset, and why. And really come closer to home, come close to your heart, and really live through your heart. Because with the Mars-Pluto opposition, we are in a phase, we're in a cultural phase and in a let's say, a epochal phase of what is approaching tyranny, with Pluto moving into Aquarius. And yes, there's also the side where people can get along and build nice communities together and do really interesting things together that can coexist with the also very clear attempt at globally tyrannizing people, and especially through these Aquarian methods, where we find a lot of what can be described as AI, or there's a lot of AI videos now, like just crazy amounts of AI videos now, crazy amounts of AI in advertising, deep fake. Somebody sent me a Christmas deep fake with sort of I don't know, like 50 different famous people having a Christmas cocktail party together. I'm like, why? Just why? Why are we doing this? And it's a really interesting phenomenon that we have to pay attention to, because this feeling of not being sure what's going on, we can only trust through our hearts and really to the emotional response to what's going on, which is in the mind, which is again the Cancer. So we're talking about the Leo Cancer paradigm here. And when Mars is in opposition to Pluto, which it will be on the 3rd, that's the second time as Mars will be retrograding, it will come back again on the 26th of January, 26th of April. But Mars will be direct, that'll be around 3 degrees, and Pluto itself will be retrograding. So there's going to be, again, this kind of pushing and pulling, but the difference will be that Mars is clearer now. The action is clearer, and the Pluto, the tyranny, let's call it, or the desire to shake up the foundations of society. So Aquarius always represents society and what freedom or otherwise we have within society, how we arrange society. That's why it's ruled by Saturn. And Saturn says, look, this is where you build your house. This is who's going to lead you. That's the fireman over there. And this is the school, and so on. That's the energy of Aquarius coming together in that way. Pluto is going to change that dramatically, and especially in these moments where there's tension, where there's this crazy opposition, like with Mars. And so with the Pluto retrograding, then that will be the thing that we're reconsidering in April, late April. And currently, we're reconsidering our role in all of it. We're reconsidering, how does this affect me? What action should I take? And what action is going to be most effective? Keep in mind also that by the time we get to the end of April, the nodes will be in Pisces. They'll be well into the 3rd decanate of Pisces, the North Node, and the 3rd decanate of Virgo for the South Node. So the energy will be very different. Equally, Neptune will be in Aries, just where we find the North Node right now. Neptune will be exactly there, and will move out of Pisces on the 30th of March. So the energy will be different, but it doesn't mean that we can't already anticipate how we want to participate going forward over the next 3-4 months, because then Mars itself, when it gets back into Leo, that will be on the 18th of April. And when it moves back into Leo, then it's going to be another 2 months in Leo before it leaves the sign of Leo. So really, we're looking at, a good period of time where really Cancer and Leo really demand our attention. This is Mars as well, demanding our attention. And we want to understand the importance of this energy that we ourselves are responsible for. So don't get caught up in things. a part of the drama or the tension of the moment is that we've also got, at the time of the opposition, we've also got Neptune here at the North Node. And there's a lot of things that indicate that we're not really seeing things very clearly. We have the moon in a square to Uranus as well. Things can be quite sudden and surprising, and that can include social behavior because the moon represents social groups, the public in general, when we're talking about mundane astrology. And of course, Uranus represents the unexpected and volatility and things that can come out of the blue, apparently. And the moon is also in a semi-sextile to Neptune. And that's something I always pay attention to. It's in so the moon is almost at 25 degrees of Aquarius. It's 2450. And that's a little bit less than 2.5 degrees from a semi-sextile with Neptune. And that can show that our judgment is clouded. It's not very sure what's going on. Remember, the moon represents the mind as well from an individual point of view, and even from a collective consciousness point of view. We're not clear. We're not sure what's going on. Neptune can be really tricky. It can, of course, be all about love and light and all the rest of it, but that works better on an individual level, and less so, especially when you're talking about collective astrology or mundane astrology. Also, we've got Mercury itself, which is pushing up against a square. It's almost at 23 degrees, pushing up into a square, just about 4.5 degrees away from Neptune. And then Mercury is also in a sextile to the moon. So there's a lot of consideration here that we need to slow down and reflect on things, slow down and think deeply about what's actually going on. We also have an inconjunct between Mercury and Uranus, which is insight, but it's not functioning terribly well because an inconjunct means that things are not comfortable. It's that feeling of edginess when somebody's standing a little too close to you in public, or they're at an angle that you can't really see. So it requires some kind of an interior sensing, and this is not working terribly well at the moment because we've got Mercury in detriment, and we've also got Jupiter, which is our wisdom, which is also in detriment. So neither of them are really as helpful as they could be. And equally, we've still got the orb of Jupiter squaring Saturn. And we do have this rather nice sextile between the Sun and Saturn, which can help. It can be very constructive and really helpful in terms of establishing something serious. Of course, Saturn rules that Sun at the moment. It's in Capricorn, sorry. And that can be something that really does stabilize our sense of what's important or a sense of direction. But this is very volatile energy in the meantime, and also really based on things that may be not entirely clear. They may save us from ourselves in one way, or they may be deeply confusing and get us deeper into a hole. We also have the Sun in an inconjunct to Jupiter that's quite strong, within like 9 minutes of a degree. So that's really a tight inconjunct between the Sun and Jupiter. And again, that's saying that we're not really clear what action to take. We're not really clear what even we believe at this point. Now, there's nothing wrong with lacking clarity. This is important. But what we have to avoid is taking action when we lack clarity. Sometimes we can't avoid that, and sometimes we need to just jump in and do the thing. But what can happen is we'll get into an argument, or we'll jump in and again, this is about the Mars archetype in Leo, where we think we know what's going on. And then we start accusations, and we start to assert ourselves or become aggressive around other people. So be careful of that. And question, am I sure? This is one of my teacher's greatest teachings, at least from my point of view, which is Thich Nhat Hanh used to do these lovely calligraphies. And my favorite one is, am I sure? No, actually, I think it says, are you sure? So are you sure? And it's really important to keep questioning that, because the mind is easily swayed, and more especially today in the age of AI, in the age of things that appear to be what they're not. This was already the case in the time of the Buddha, 2,500 years ago. This is extremely intense right now. We're grappling with a lot of things that we cannot be certain of. One thing we can be certain of is that any relic media or any kind of media that has some kind of commercial bent to it, or political bent, or government connection, is going to be propaganda. There's just no two ways about that. And this is, again, I've said this, if you've been following, you have heard this a million times, that for me, the meaning of this very extended sextile between Pluto and Neptune that's gone through the last century and continues for quite a while yet, a couple of years more, a few years more, that for me represents the propaganda that we've been dealing with, that represents this urge for control by swaying the masses. And of course, Neptune represents what we're not really seeing clearly. Things like motivations and what is actually going on behind the scenes. We're not really seeing these things clearly when Neptune is involved. And that is especially true when we've got the North Node so close to Neptune. So we do need to be wary, particularly in these first few months of this year, because there's going to be an enormous amount of what we could describe as false flag opportunities, or lie hop, which is let it happen on purpose, where things happen in such a way that it conveniently leads to an outcome that is favorable to a more tyrannical, controlling government, for example. And that applies to everywhere. I don't consider any longer that in Europe we live in democracies. Same with North America. That's a thing of the past, if it ever was. I doubt that too. But anyway, so I just want to check my notes to make sure that I've covered all my bases before we move into the sign by sign forecast. Yeah, I wanted to point out as well that, of course, we've had now Pluto in Capricorn since the beginning of 2008. And that transit destroyed what we understood was things that we could rely on in terms of government or institutions, or what we thought was there for us, that we were going to be able to rely on these things, whether it be people or government institutions, or even financial institutions. And they all have been shown to be these houses of cards, these false fronts, and that's what Pluto does. It moves in and it shows the truth. It reveals what is true with a capital T. There's no escaping this. And for one of the ways that this Pluto being opposed by Mars can show up for us in these next 3 months or 4 months is that it can be very strongly associated with exposing the truth behind violence, or the truth behind the need for war, or the truth behind terrorism, so-called terrorism. And start to see behind the scenes who's operating, who's pulling all those strings. And we've already had a good glimpse of that in the last 16 years of Pluto in Capricorn. But I'd say that that's going to be something that we're going to really start to notice. So we're really entering into this whole new era, having the destroyed, in a way, the previous era, what we thought we could rely on. Now we realize, okay, that's done, including even mainstream media. And now when Pluto moves into Aquarius, we're not out of the danger zone. So you have to keep reminding yourself that if your team won the election, your team is still a facade. The people who are actually in power have nothing to do with the political podium. Most of them actually avoid showing up entirely. And quite nefarious money is behind the incoming government in the United States. I'm not interested in the political stuff, and that's one of the reasons why I don't really want to do mundane astrology anymore, because the whole thing is theater, the whole thing is fake, but it gets people so angry and divisive. And this is the Mars opposite Pluto. It's dividing people based on a lie. So really pay attention to what's going on. There's going to be a point later in January when Mars itself will be trining Neptune. And you'll also have to be careful that you're clear what action to take based on this trine. It can be that you're not really clear and that it's not really sure, or that you're taking action based on something of a higher principle. Now, when Mars is retrograde, I'd say it's more the latter, especially as the North Node is there. Mars is ruling the North Node again until the 11th of January. And then thereafter, it's going to be Jupiter still in retrograde and in its detriment. in Gemini that's ruling the North Node until Jupiter moves into Cancer in June. So we don't really have a strong ruler for the North Node until we get into June, second week of June. And that means that there's things that are still a little edgy, things that are still a little bit uncertain. Pluto in Aquarius is definitely going to be breaking down the social contract. It's going to be breaking down what we thought society was. And this is why it's extremely important to live through your heart, live through what is your inner guidance, because that also represents the slippery slope towards being managed and even micromanaged based on devices, the devices that we use or the devices that we use in our homes, but also our personal body, because the body itself is becoming slowly a device. And this transhuman movement is also behind the funding of very important political parties and elections. And so we have, for example, Peter Thiel, who is behind Palantir and who is the funder of J.D. Vance, who is the vice president for Trump. And although on the surface, Trump says he's all about freedom and, pulling back from wars and all these others, everything that they're doing speaks to the opposite. So this is another opportunity to really feel with your heart. Don't be fooled by your eyes. Don't let your eyes, remember we're saying here that the Mercury, which is this kind of instant cognition or the intellect, is going to be cloudy. It's squaring Neptune. It's in conjunct Uranus. Things are going to be a little bit fuzzy. It's this emotionality that can be there, this lack of clarity that can be there, especially at this moment, is going to be, shocking, surprising, and certainly unreliable at this time. And so we're also in this situation where we need to pay attention to what people do. And when people show you who they are, believe them, as the saying goes, and not what they say, because this notion of somehow draining the swamp as if it happened the last time, this is all a house of cards. None of it is real. And I'm just taking the US as an example because so many of you are from there. And I know that a lot of you are on team A and the rest of you are on team B. And you just have to step back. And this is part of the challenge of this time. If we go to Mars, let's say we move forward a little bit here. Let's go into the transits and we go forward to the 6th. And I'm just going to pull up only the transits now so we can just be clear where Mars is going. So from the 6th, we've got Mars going back into Cancer. And when Mars is in Cancer, there can be terrible division within families, within societies, within collectives of all kinds, but division in terms of our emotional fragmentation as well. Now, Mars remains in the opposition. The opposition starts to weaken, but by degree, it's still there for quite some time, for many, many days. And so this opposition is still going to be affecting us. When Mars moves back into Cancer, especially going to resonate with what we experienced in October. So again, remember the emotionality of the month of October and up until the 4th of November. Remember what people did to each other, how they spoke to each other based on what they were convinced was true and what was the absolute right action or wrong action coming from their opinion. And this is where Mars doesn't work so well with the moon. Mars is, in the case of Cancer, ruled by the moon. It doesn't gel with the moon very well. So it's the aspect of connection. The moon is all about bringing people together. It's nourishing and pulling people together, very much like Venus. It's the heartfelt bond that people create with each other. It's whether it's your family, your little isolated family, or the human family. This is the Cancer archetype. And it's like the womb, the cosmic womb, what the Indians call the Hiranyagarbha, this golden cosmic womb that creates life itself. That's why Cancer is the rising sign in the Tema Mundi, or the imaginary chart of the world. If the Earth had a natal chart, it would have a Cancer rising, because water is the source of life, and that connectivity and pulling people together is the origin of life. And so this is the energy of nurturance that is now being split by Mars, that's now being disrupted by Mars. It can come from a feeling of I need to protect, I'm afraid, I need to protect my family or my emotions, I need to protect my mind from what I perceive to be an attack on me personally. This is, of course, the moon is also a part of our sense of self, the separate self, the egoic self, just as the sun is. It's not that only the sun represents the ego, the moon also represents a fragment of ego. Both of them also represent a fragment of what we could describe as soul. But we have to understand when Mars goes through there, it's not so harmonious. It doesn't work so well. Mars works way better with the sun because the sun is a little bit of a malefic on its own, and Mars is a malefic that wants to take action and separate and get stuff done and get moving. And Cancer is more receptive energy. It's more passive energy. And it's about connection and nurturance, not about getting stuff done and arguing about it. It's not to say Cancers can't argue. It's just to say that the archetype is not that, you see? So and then so we have also this tendency here with the Cancer quality to fight amongst ourselves. And one really important question is how much of that is orchestrated? If you have a good sense of history, even just modern history, you will see that so often what we thought was spontaneous, like spontaneous rebellion, spontaneous revolution, spontaneous war, a spontaneous terrorist act, was actually carefully planned and plotted for even decades, and by people who are not necessarily public. Probably none of you have any idea what Peter Thiel looks like, but he has an enormous amount of influence. And so you really have to understand that what we think is going on is not entirely what's going on. And therefore, we benefit a lot from holding our judgment and turning within at this time, not to say don't act, to say turn within first and really try and assess how do we feel about something and clarify the feelings before then reaching into action, before reaching into something that might create a bigger problem or actually start some issue. So we're going to see new social divisions for sure with Pluto going through Aquarius. This is not going to be the only time. This is part of the 20-year journey of Pluto in Aquarius. It's going to create some pretty crazy social divisions. And we had that, in all of these glorified and romanticized revolutions that people often refer to with Pluto going through Aquarius the last time. We had quite a lot of terror. There was a lot of bloodshed and there was a lot of separation. And the separation was based on ideology, which is Aquarius. This energy of ideology is similar to the Mars in Leo. It's my belief, my idea, my concept, my way of looking at things. And of course, Leo is the opposite sign to Aquarius. And what is our ideology? What is our concept? What is our belief? If you've ever sat next to a militant vegan, you know that even somebody who considers themselves a pacifist can be extremely violent. And I'm just giving that as an example. It's nothing against vegans. It's just to say that we have to understand who we are before we can actually really reach out into the world that we want to see and clear up the mess that actually might be deeply, deeply affecting us from childhood. Because of course, Cancer also represents our home, family, and childhood. It's our connection to our mother, especially, but also the father, not just the mother. Our parents, it's part of the dynamic between Cancer and Capricorn, which is the parents. So Mars, of course, is personal will as well. And Pluto is in the house where we're looking at the power dynamic of the collective. And again, with the AI or with the capacity to control the information flow, to control the media, we need to be careful. And this is not just the first couple of weeks of January. As I said, this is a theme that will be staying with us for quite some time. I think that's probably all that I needed to say about that. Whenever you have that urge to look outwards and say, this is all happening because of them, we need to really explore our own behavior and explore not just how we feel, but also what we're agreeing to. What have we allowed? What are we agreeing to? and recognize that sometimes what we think is really positive is actually quite nefarious. And knowing that the people who are power hungry, people who control money and who are trying to control global events, they're very patient people, and they will wait generations. They will wait a long, long time. Peter Thiel, as I mentioned earlier, he's part of the Bilderberg group. He's on the steering committee of Bilderberg, which was founded in the 50s, like 1954. And that was kept secret until about 15 years ago. Nobody was allowed to even talk about it. Then Pluto and Capricorn said, hey, guess what? There's all these people behind the scenes that are creating this world. And this world is quite nefarious. And these people don't mind the plans that they have. They've been generating for literally generations and certainly decades. And we think that all these things arise out of nowhere, but we have to be aware if we want our freedom, which is an Aquarian value as well as a Leo value, and Mars in Leo wants its freedom for sure. If we want our freedom, we have to understand what do I relate to as free? What is freedom to me? You know, what is the notion of being free? And that's something that you can reflect on as well in terms of mental and emotional freedom, because being truly free is a quality of the mind. It's not necessarily something that someone confers on you. As Thich Nhat Hanh said as well, be free where you are. And he used to teach that to prisoners, particularly, that you are you're in a frame of reference that is always coming from within towards the outside world. And you can be free in that circumstance. You can be free exactly where you are in this moment. And the chains that bind you are coming from the mind. And this is one of the greater teachings of the Buddha. Right, I'm going to stop that for now. Did I give you all the dates? So let's just go through the dates so we're sure, and then I will go sign by sign. So Mars enters Cancer on the 6th of January, not the 7th as is indicated here. It's just that the hours were not correct, so I kept going. It stations direct on the 23rd of February, and that's going to be at 17 degrees of Cancer. I'm going to do a separate video about that because lots will have changed between January and February. And then it will ingress Leo again as it moves slowly forward. So from the 23rd of February, it's going to move only 13 degrees until it gets into Leo again on the 18th of April. So you see how slow Mars is moving when it's retrograding. It's very, very slow. And then it stays in Leo until mid-June. So we've got this long, long journey, this long story about everything I described at the very beginning. This is not just for this moment that we need to reflect on these things. We do at the same time, if we go back, oh, hang on, didn't mean to do that. If we go back to the 3rd of January, we also have Venus that moves in. So we not only have that opposition on the 3rd of January, but we have Venus that just a couple of hours before moved into Pisces. And that's the one nice thing. But I would rather see Venus, not so kind of hemmed in, because she is going to be hemmed in once the moon moves on. She's hemmed in from Pluto and from Saturn. So it's not a great place for her. And then later it's going to be from the sun itself. So Venus and the sun don't get along. That's not a great energy for her, but it doesn't matter. It's still a good Venus. It's a good Venus in good dignity. All right, let's have a look sign by sign at what's going on here. And I'm just going to move until we get Aries on the ascendant, so we can start with Aries. Right, so for Aries, sun, moon, and rising, and listen to the intro to know why I say all three. This opposition is happening from your 5th house of your self-expression and your what makes you happy, what brings you joy, and what makes you be you, let's say. And that's coming from the 5th house to the 11th house of what you hope for in the future, what you dream of, what social expectations are bringing you, and what society you feel like you're participating in. What's the image of the collective that you're participating in? This can change your groups of friends, or it may have you clash with groups of friends or groups of people that might be political or religious or spiritual in some way, that you that you're not really aligning with what they feel, or you're not any longer aligning with who you thought you were. And therefore, you're kind of reflecting on this, given that you've had a year and a half now of the North Node through your first house, as well as Chiron, who is now, by the way, since the end of December, moving direct in your first house. You've had a lot of reflection on who you are, Aries, and there's been a lot of reflection on how to be you, how to do Aries, how to be yourself, and feel your self-worth and feel your sense of what you need in this lifetime. So this can be something that for the last 2 months, while Mars has been in your fifth house since the 4th of November, that you've been reflecting on quite a lot. But since the 6th of December, something may have slowed your roll a little bit. You may have had to step back and reconsider what it is that you were hoping for or wanting to express or wanting to reach into. That can include a love affair or some kind of love, romantic love relationship, because Mars also rules your eighth house of other people. It's a house of intimacy. It's a house of what is maybe hidden from you as well, in terms of your own inner experience, your inner sort of depth psychology or family secrets. This kind of thing can also be part of the bigger story at this time, especially if you've got Uranus in your second house of money, values, and family, and it's retrograding. So things might be a bit shaken up at this time as well around those things. But I would have to see your natal chart to really be more clear about this. But this Mars, nonetheless, is really about what do I need and who do I need to be in this moment. And you're going to get another opportunity based on all these things that you've learned about yourself from the 18th of April through till the middle of June. You're going to get this opportunity again as Mars goes then direct all the way through your fifth house and will not come back for 2 years after that. So you have this maybe tension at the moment that can be extremely instructive. It can be something that you really understand is true for you. This is part of getting to the truth with the Pluto in the 11th as well. It's what is true about this moment in time. What is true about my aim for the future, my vision for the future, and these projects that I want to undertake that have maybe a social appeal or a long-term appeal to me. What does the future hold for me? And something about you or the way that you're connecting or the way that you're manifesting your creativity is under reconsideration. So that doesn't mean that the projects are wrong, but it means that somehow you're not ready for them, or you're not feeling that you're clear on the thing, and it needs to come back for revision. You might have issues around security, insecurity when Mars moves back into your fourth house in Cancer, and feeling some doubt, emotional or psychological doubt, when Mars after the 6th is going to go back into your fourth house when it's in Cancer. And remember that Mars represents you in so many ways. It's like the little ambassador, the little missionary going forth in the chart, as it represents Aries. So it's the ruler of Aries. So it's kind of like saying you are involved in this directly. And it certainly will impact you very strongly. Mars ruled signs like Aries and Scorpio will definitely be impacted, regardless of where that comes through the chart, because Mars retrograding is something that really pulls on the sense of self when it's the ascendant ruler, and the sense of position in life and how to act in life, how to move forward in life. When Mars goes through the fourth, there can be some disruption at home as well. That does represent home, house, living quarters, and it's your lineage as well as your family of origin. And the fourth house is what makes you feel secure. And it's what you need to feel emotionally and psychologically secure. And certainly there's grounds for doubting that just at this moment. And so maybe that's another thing that you're going to have to come back and take action on and stabilize. And also when Mars goes through the fourth house, there can be just quite literal problems. It can be like things that need to be repaired, things that get damaged for whatever reason, things that get, and that can be the metaphorical family, the sense of family is needing repair or being damaged, or it can be the home, like home as an idea, or home as an actual physical place. There can be something that needs repair. It doesn't have to be dramatic. That would depend on your natal chart. So Again, be careful of exaggerating when you hear one element of a general reading like this. Don't take it 20 steps ahead and make that mean that the next 20 years are a catastrophe. I don't really get excited about those kind of comments in the comment section, because it shows that there's a great deal of there's a lack of real thought going behind those kinds of comments. A lot of emotion, not much genuine discernment. So use discernment at this time, especially as Mars is retrograding. Use discernment. And that's how you're going to get closer to your heart. Right. This is what we want as well. All right, Aries, good luck with that. I'll see you in the next video. So Taurus, this opposition is happening between your fourth house and your 10th house of your outer directed activities. It can be your career, it can be your vocation, it can be just how you reach out into the world, how you want to be seen, what your legacy might represent, how you connect to people through social mores as well. And from the fourth house, there may be some tension, there may be separation or loss or some kind of disruption. And it can also be where there might be something that needs to be tended to. It might be needing repair, for example. Your ruler, however, Venus, is in the 11th house, which is quite favorable. She's not only happy in the 11th house, but also she is in her sign of exaltation. So your ruler is in very good form, which means that you're somehow feeling better about yourself, and you're going to do well in terms of how you interact with people. So whatever this dilemma is here in the fourth house, this might be your story. It might be something that you're needing to contend with, that needs to have a little bit more reflection or action, but you're not ready to know exactly what that is. If you're talking to people, or if you're thinking with your partner, for example, about buying property, this could also be a part of this story where you thought, yeah, I'm going to go into that. No, not going to do it. It could be about investing in a home, or it could be investing in renovations to a home. But something's not quite working, and it's not quite where you want to go with this right now. So just it might be a good idea to hold off for a little bit. When Mars moves into Cancer, it's going to move into your third house, and Mars is strong in the third house. That's the house of willpower, and it's the house of what action you want to take. It's the house of choice, and Mars is very decisive, except not so much when it's retrograding, and not so much when it's in Cancer. So there could be some lack of clarity for a little while, at least maybe till the 23rd, 24th of February, on what to do. There may be a little bit of resistance to taking that decision. And, this is one of the reasons why Taurus has this reputation for finding it difficult to change or take decisions. And that's largely because the moon, which changes all the time, is the ruler of the third house, and also the 11th house of the future. And what one sees in perspective is ruled by Jupiter in the dual sign of Pisces. So there's always this kind of, well, I see both sides kind of to it. And so there's a hesitation around choice. And equally, there's two sides to Taurian values as well, which can influence choice. And we've got Jupiter in retrograde currently in detriment in your second house of values and what you value and what is valuable to you. So it may be that you need to renegotiate a contract. We've also got Mercury that had been since November retrograding through your 8th house. It spends a lot of time in your 8th house because of that retrograde. And again, in the end of this year, it will come back. But by that time, we'll be done with this Mars story. But that also might have something to do with loans or money that you share with other people. So something here requires better consideration, some more thought, and also seeing the long game. Don't get yourself embroiled in ideological battles with other people. It's not the time right now. It's not going to be very helpful. Sometimes you won't be able to avoid it, but be careful that you're aware of your emotional motives. Let's say what's coming behind this argument, what's coming behind this desire for change or action. All right, Taurus, good luck with that, and I'll see you in the next video. So Gemini, this is happening in your third house, which is a house that's familiar to you. It's the house that you naturally rule. And the third house is all about decisions and choice and about willpower and what we want to take action on. It's communication as well. So when Mars is in the third house, communication can be quite strong, let's say, and there can be some arguments, there can be some tension around that. It can also lead to being a bit flippant or not really seeing the other person's point of view, because Mars in Leo is quite attached to its own perspective, to its own point of view. And it can be difficult to see someone else's point of view. But whatever is coming up here has the potential to influence your vision for your own life, because that's changing. And your vision for what you have faith in, what you believe in, is being challenged. And so whatever this is, the new thing that you need to do in terms of how you need to communicate or how you need to think about things as well, is potentially being challenged there in the with the Pluto opposition. You'll know more about that at the end of April once they come back into opposition with Pluto retrograding and Mars direct. But nonetheless, be careful how you speak to others. Be careful of what you say, because you can cause some disruption or you can cause some damage in relationship if you're not careful how you frame words. Like I said at the beginning, the world is on fire because our senses are on fire. It's because we're not really slowing down to see how we're doing, how we're feeling. And with Mars in the third, it's difficult to actually grapple with that because there's so much busyness, even a Mars retrograde, but that can turn against you, can turn inward. The third house is also the house of the mind. It's the house of the awareness of the moon, or the notion of the mind as it's changing through emotions and through the mental, chit chat, the inner chat. And so this can also have you feeling a bit aggravated. It can have you feeling a little disturbed or disrupted mentally. It would depend again on your natal chart what that might be affecting, but it's worth knowing that if you're feeling agitated, if you're feeling disrupted at this point, then you might need to really just step back and take a break from either the relationship or the notion or the conversation that you're engaging in. Especially so if this is happening online, especially so if this is happening in that social media space where you don't actually know the other person and you're just firing off your opinion or your ideas, and that can just cause a lot of harm. When we hurt somebody else verbally, it's as damaging as if we hurt them physically. And it's not because we don't know them that the hurt doesn't also remain. It sticks on us. So just be careful of that, Gemini. And also, when Mars is moving on the 6th of January, when Mars is moving back into your second house, where it's going to stay till the 18th of April, there can be some issues around money where you have to put in more effort around income, or there might be something that requires your attention around work and your the relationship between work and earnings, or your sense of what you want out of the future based on money, based on what you feel is enough for you. Do I have enough, or do I need to manage my money better? Mars rules your 11th house of gains and the money that you can earn from work that you do, especially if you're an entrepreneur. And it also rules your 6th house of everyday work. And it also rules your health. And the second house also represents health, and especially ruled by the moon, that can represent your mental health again. So there can be a quality of mental health, or the moon also represents the body. Second house is depends on the system of astrology that you consult. The second house can also represent the body. And so there's something here that you want to pay attention to in general with family, even because the third house is extended family. The 11th, which is ruled by Mars, is elder siblings, and the dynamic of the third can extend into cousins, aunts, uncles, and people like that. And also when Mars moves back into the second house, that's also family. That's your closer family unit, the family that really supports you, the family that's or doesn't, that's got your back. So when Mars moves in there may be some tension around that, or there may be that you are required to take action based on something that the family requires of you. So that also will be to be reflected on until the 18th of April. And also, if you go back to October, this would have a similarity about it. So there would have been something that you would have had to deal with in October that might be up for revision here as Mars goes back into your second house. So quite a dynamic energy, whether it be around money or around family relations, or around if you're working online, this will also be part of that story because Mars in the third of the communication house, exchanges and business and so on, is also ruling the North Node in your 11th. So maybe what you're reconsidering how you show up online, or you're reconsidering how you might put out content, for example, if that's part of what you do. Right, I would need to see a natal chart to tell you more about that, but good luck with that, Gemini, and I'll see you in the next video. Cancer, the Mars is going through the second house of money and possessions and what you value and your values as well, your sense of self-worth, your own value. And a lot of that has been on the agenda since since the 4th of November, when Mars moved into your second house, and then it retrograded from the 6th of December. And so a lot of that may have been questioned. So whatever seemed to be taking shape is moving back, or you're reflecting on it. How does that work? Is this working well? Maybe you need to line up your ducks in a row in terms of your finances, or maybe it's something to do with your connection even to your own family. For example, the second house also represents your family in the sense of how it supports you. Or it might be something to do with, again, what you feel is important, your values, and those are changing. And that can be very important with respect to your career, because Mars rules your 10th house of career and your 5th house of entrepreneurship and how you show up. So your kind of outer motivations to be seen. The 5th house is like your self-expression. It's also love, romance, of course, children as well. There might be something, depending on whether you have children or don't, you might be reflecting on children, issues that might concern your children or concerning the topic of children. Should we, shouldn't we, etc. As Mars is retrograding in the second, sadly, a lot of people are having to decide not to have children for financial reasons. Some of them are also doing that for reasons of ideology. This is not a good world to bring in children, etc. I'd say it probably never was. So if you want to have children, just have children. And your child might actually be somebody who comes in and resolves major problems in the world. So you never know. Anyway, so Pluto in the 8th house is focusing also on this transformation of your inner life, your connection to whether it be your unconscious mind or the occult, or like what we're doing here, astrology, all these different occult studies, the mystery schools type stuff. And the 8th house is also family secrets. What you get from your family and what you might not be aware is coming through the family. So you might have something revealed there at this time, where Pluto in the 8th is going to be digging that up over time. That's going to be 20 years hence that we're working with the Pluto in the 8th. But at this particular moment, the tension is there. It's between, do I do this thing for money, or is that not a good thing for me? And is this what are my motivations, perhaps around money, potentially even around marriage? What are my motivations in terms of this partnership, in terms of this business partner, in terms of this marriage partner, etc., etc. And then, of course, Mars is going to move back into your sign, Cancer, on the 6th of January. And that will have you going back through energy that you were experiencing in October until the 4th of November. And it's going to be a slow moving Mars. So you might feel, especially up until the 23rd of February, you might feel that you're working really hard and getting not much done. So it can feel like you're doing more than you would normally have to do to accomplish the same. And that doesn't mean that you're not doing the right thing. It just means that you might need to reorganize your own personal energy and the way that you use it. This can also quite literally make you feel tired, more tired. It doesn't have to. That's not for everybody. And it certainly depends on your natal chart anyway. But if you do feel tired, that's part of the how to rearrange your life, how to rearrange, especially your outer life, your social connections, in terms of social obligations, let's say, or the thing that you do, your career, your vocation, what you do outside of the house. Even if you're not working, the 10th house applies to you because it's very much what you do outside your front door, how you are. And so when Mars is going through your first house, there's a part of you that feels like your motivations are changing based on what it is that you feel you need to do out in the world. And especially at this moment with the North Node being trined by Mars and in your 10th house, about to move into your 9th house of purpose and your higher values, there's a moment right now which is crystallizing around what you need to do or why you're doing what you're doing. If, for example, am I motivated by a salary? Am I motivated by income and I hate my life, or I hate my job, or I hate my boss, or whatever? This might be the moment to deeply reflect on that and how to deal with that, how to grapple with that. The 5th house is also the house of risk-taking, investment, and so on. So again, maybe there's this questioning around that. It'll be more clear to you in the second half of April what any of that represents. But in terms of Mars being in the first house, it's going to be trining your 5th house. So that can actually be a really interesting time for you to put more of yourself into the 5th house stuff. Again, whether it represents some kind of self-expansion or the way you express yourself out in the world creatively, children, education as well. The 5th house is the intellect as well. So it can represent things that you know and how you spread that knowledge. And also it's going to be trining your 9th house, where there's going to be a lot of activity, including the North Node. So you're going to have some help from Mars in all of those 5th house and 9th house areas. It's quite positive then. So Mars functions well for Cancer overall. It's not ideal to have Mars in the sign of Cancer. That's the problem. But when Mars is transiting, and wherever Mars is transiting, Mars is good for Cancer because Mars rules the 10th house and it rules the 5th house. So it's not necessarily, and it's also exalted in the 7th house. So it's actually very strong for Cancer. It's just that it's not great in the sign of Cancer. So yeah, you might need to go over some subjective emotions and feelings, issues of insecurity or issues around repressed anger or anything that connects you to family or loss around family. Mars is also about loss and separation in a similar way to Saturn, but often more Sun or yeah, let's not go into that. It would depend on your natal chart, but that can also be one potential as well. Right. So yeah, wish you all the best with that, Cancer, and I will see you in the next video. Leo, of course, Mars is here in your first house, yourself. And then at this time, really, since the 4th of November, you've been holding Mars in your sign, and this is really creating a lot of intensity. You might have a lot of projects, a lot of ambition, a lot of drive. Now, the other aspect of Leo is integrity. What is the, where do I uphold integrity, or is there a lack of integrity in my life? And how is that working for me? And with Mars retrograding, there may be some pushback on something that's been happening that needs to be cleared up, needs to be better understood, needs to be better acted upon. Mars is also about action. It's about what do you do about something. It's about the choices that you make. And so there is this kind of sense of where maybe you've been disheartened by something that's happened and you're not really sure any longer. Maybe you're lacking clarity around your integrity or clarity around the right thing to do at this point. You may, with the opposition here of Pluto in your 7th house, there may be some issue that is a contention, let's say, in relationship. It's going to be very clarifying, but probably not fully so until the end of April. So from the 18th of April onwards, you're going to come through that opposition on the 26th of April, exactly when Mars comes back to oppose Pluto at 3 degrees of each sign. But then Mars is clear, Mars is direct, and you become more clear yourself. And this is, of course, with reference to the houses Mars rules, which are the 9th house of your higher purpose and your sense of your why am I here? What is life about? Why do I do what I do? It's your destiny, kind of your destiny. It's known as the road to God as well. It's your, what do I have faith in? What do I believe in? Certainly the last year and a half, you've looked into that quite a lot with the North Node there. And then with Chiron there since 2018, May 2018, there may be some wounding around that. The ninth also represents fathers. And Mars not only rules your ninth, but it also rules your fourth house of home and family. And so there may be something here around relating to fathers. And for Leos, fathers always figure prominently. There's no way out of this, whether you are a sun, moon, or rising sign in Leo. Fathers play a strong role in your life for good or bad. And so there may be something here that requires some reassessment, something that needs to be taken care of, something that needs to be taken, some kind of action needs to be taken around this. This could also be about property. The fourth house is about property. And so when Mars goes into your 12th house, that's the sign of foreign lands and faraway places, or moving away, or retreating, taking a back seat to where you've been up until this point. And that might affect where you live. So this, again, depends on your natal chart, depends on where everything is placed in your chart and how that might look for you personally. But this could be one of the potentials. And this can have something to do with ancestors as well, because Mars rules your fourth house of lineage, and it rules the ninth house of father, and it's going into the 12th house of ancestors, including your spirit. Now, the ninth house is also a very spiritual place. The fourth house is a psychological place, and the 12th house is about our unconscious. It's about how we don't necessarily see what's there. It's what's hidden from others as well as from ourselves often. And we do have a lot of action in your 8th house as well, which suggests that that could be part of this story. So you might be dealing with quite a lot of psychological stuff at this time. So try not to be overreactive. Try not to react from an emotional place, and question, am I sure? Are you sure, Leo? Are you sure? Question that, because you may end up struggling with others. With this Pluto opposition from your 7th, you may be struggling, whether it's be your life partners or business partners or people in general. And really, it's not necessary to go into that. So you can question what you're holding faith in, what you believe, and is it true? Right. Good luck with that, Leo. I'll see you in the next video. So Virgo, this is happening from your 12th house, where Mars is active in your 12th house. And it's opposing Pluto in your 6th house of your everyday experience. And that's where we see the tension, let's say, between what is good for you, or what you're doing that is good for you, and what is maybe undermining you. And when Mars is retrograding through the 12th, you maybe start to recognize that there are patterns, that you're aware of patterns of behavior that are not good for you, not constructive. There may be a part of you that is not aware of these habits. Pluto is going to change your everyday life in a dramatic way over the next 20 years. Your everyday sort of context for life will be very different. And that may include your work, like literally, where do I work and what is my job? But it can also mean how you live every day, and that can affect your health. For example, health issues might be a part of this. Now, Mars also rules your 8th house of the unconscious mind, your family secrets and family baggage, things that you might have inherited in terms of family stories, drama, difficulties that you might be grappling with at this time. And this can also be connected to loss in some way, because the 8th house and the 12th house are both connected in some way to loss. The 3rd house represents extended family. It's ruled by Mars. There may be somebody in the extended family who is passing, or that there's some kind of issue with a sibling potentially. And I'm not saying this is going to happen. I'm saying these are the potentials, given the way the houses rhyme here. And or this is something to do with a loss of vision, or a loss of sense, not your eyesight, a loss of your vision, higher vision, a change of mind around that, perhaps, is a better way of saying that, based on what you realize is an everyday imperative. Then the bigger question becomes, is this really the imperative I want to live through? So that's part of your role with Pluto moving through the 6th house, is how do I get to the place of what is true for me in my everyday life, in my health, my physical health, my mental health, my spiritual health, and in my daily routines. Is this the right job? Do I like my job? Do I want this job? So you might find yourself struggling around these bigger, more existential questions based on how you live your everyday. And then we also have Mars then moving into the 11th on the 6th of January, and it's going to stay there until the 18th of April. And when it does that, it's going to be perhaps having you rethink your future, rethink your goals and visions for the future. Again, the 11th house can represent siblings. It depends on your family composition, but you might have an elder sibling that can be represented by Mars in the 11th. And there's something going on in that person's life. What I said earlier about the family and siblings and things can also be about what's going on in other people's lives, but you have to somehow grapple with that, or you're on the margins of that. Mars in the 11th house really puts a lot of effort and energy into the future. What do I want for the future? How do I choose my friends as well? Who's my tribe? Who are my people? This is something you can go back to April and reflect on, sorry, not April, October 2024, and reflect on that and see what might need changing, or how you might need to stand up in a social group as well. It can also be about leadership. Mars is definitely associated with leadership. And so how you might fit into a social group, or how that might pan out for you in terms of the leadership qualities that you can bring to an organization or a group, or it can be a religious or spiritual or political group, or just casual friends, the people that you hang out with, but especially also think about it in terms of your vision. So Mars also, as I said, it represents your 8th house of other people's money, as well as the 3rd house of commerce and exchanges and action and skills and so on. And when Mars goes into the 11th house, there can be something about money, because that's the house of gains. And Mars in the house of gains can have you putting a lot of effort into how to reach out to have more money, for example, or how you might need to manage your vision around finances. Now, the gains tend to come to you, or it's coming through you if you are an entrepreneur. And that's something to perhaps balance out at this time as well. The South Node is in your 2nd house of money for the last year and a half, and it's about to move into your 1st house of self. So maybe there's something that you realize about money, or about your own value, or about your family that you really need to let go. And this is kind of like the final moment of letting go, as Mars is sextiling that South Node, and it's trining the North Node in the 8th before that moves into your house of relationship, and brings new representation, new people, new ways of relating. And so this can also have something to do with that connection to money and your own sense of value as well. And especially if you like what you do, or how or not, with Pluto in a trine to that South Node. All right, I need to see your natal chart to know more about that, Virgo, and I'll see you in the next video. So Libra, this is happening in your 11th house of groups and associations. So this, and also your vision for the future, how you see yourself going forward in life, what life represents to you, where you want to end up in life. And maybe this is something to do with how you are, how you're reaching out into social groups, how you're reaching out into friendships, how you're reaching out into the collective, or how you're reaching into your future. Do you still want those same dreams? Is that still the thing that you want? And Pluto in your 5th is really encouraging you now, and it has been for 2 years and continues for 2 more decades. Pluto is saying you got to show up differently. You need to really be true to yourself, honor who you are, and show up differently. It's about self-expression as much as anything. It's certainly also, if you have children, or if you want children, it'll change the dynamic there, either between you and the children that are there, or it'll change the dynamic in terms of how you feel about children. You might go from wanting them to not wanting them. And this Mars going through your 11th house is kind of like, well, is that the way I see my future or not? And then when Mars goes into the 10th house, which will happen on the 6th of January, and then until the 18th of April, then you're going to have a lot of activity in your house of your social status, which may be about, again, with reference to the children stuff, You know, what's my role as a head of a family, or what's my role in society, or what's my role in this job? What's my ambition? The 10th house represents the career ambition and drive and our sort of social aims as well. It's your personal ambition, and that's why Mars does extremely well in the 10th house. And so even though it's in Cancer, where it might become you have to be careful about over emotionality, or be careful about pushing those drives deep down, repressing the drives, and maybe not activating that Mars in the 10th. You can actually have great benefits from Mars going through the 10th, even when it's not in great dignity. It does rule your 7th house of relationships, and it rules your 2nd house of money. So when Mars is in the 10th, it's very strong for you in terms of business partnerships or income, or how you connect, potentially, again, the story around family, because Mars does rule the 2nd house of family, and it's the exaltation ruler of your 4th house. So this is why we see so many connections to Libra and family and relationships. It's Mars is putting all that dynamism in those relationships of all kinds. So this could be something that makes you decide differently around your future for your career. So if you are a Libra that is reconsidering your career or how you step out into career, what is my ambition doing to me? This could be a very good significator when Mars is in Cancer. Is this good for my health or not? Am I suffering from this ambition and drive? Is that helpful for me? And notice that Mars was there in September and October, but particularly Mars's transit in October was what Mars is going to repeat in that retrograde phase. And then when it goes direct again on the 23rd of February, it goes through that whole story. And so you can maybe go back to October and see what was going on then, that you can maybe mull over and reflect on before taking action. Certainly, as the North Node is just a week later going to go into your 6th house of work, for a year and a half. And then Mars is ruling that North Node. It does seem that you're reconsidering your career, reconsidering your everyday life, reconsidering what life feels like to you. What is my daily life? And then Jupiter, of course, tells us a similar story, as it's squaring Saturn still at this time, and it's in the house of what you feel your higher purpose is. So you're really reflecting deeply on what is my life at this point. Kind of feels like everything's up in the air, but whatever has changed in the last year and a half is going to bring you something very, very different. When the South Node moves into the 12th house, you start to realize patterns, especially in the outer world, patterns that were really unhelpful to you, and you get more and deeply connected to what is important for you. This more spiritual side of yourself, what's important to you. And then the North Node in the 6th is going to help you aim for a better role in your everyday life, maybe through your health or through a new job, for example. Right, and we'll see more about that in another video about the nodal shift, but that's what I've got for you there, Libra. So good luck with that. So Scorpio Mars rules your sign. So whether your sun, moon, or ascendant sign, Mars is a ruler of those placements. And it's very important what Mars does in your chart. So much like Aries, you have to track Mars. And especially when Mars is retrograde, you might find that things are a little bit stuck. They become difficult. You don't really feel like you're moving in the direction that you want to go. Now, in this case, it's about your 10th house of your career and how you show up socially. There may be some doubt around that. There may be some questioning about that, and even questioning around your integrity about that, because, of course, Leo operates around integrity in your 10th house. And then when Mars goes back into your 9th, that's going to be a big questioning around your sense of your purpose, your higher purpose, a big question mark around that since September, October. Mars is opposing Pluto that is in your 4th house. So your whole foundation in life is being changed. Your sense of what you thought you could rely on in terms of even the actual material structure of your life, the physical property and land you live on, the house and home, the family unit, your psychological nature, what makes you feel content or secure in general, that's being strongly affected by this. And so your social status, meaning married, not married, parent, not parent, etc., and your career and vocation and all of that personal ambition is affecting this whole part of your chart in terms of the structure of what makes you feel secure. So you really want to think deep, long about this situation that you're presented with or that you're dealing with at the moment, because it certainly also seems to be affecting your day-to-day health and work. Mars rules your sixth house of everyday life and obligations and duties and the schlepping and all the stuff that we have to do every day, as well as the work colleagues and the people that might work for you as well. So there's a lot of change around this for Scorpio, and this is something that's quite profound as well. It does look like after February, certainly when Jupiter will station direct on 4th of February, and then Mars will station from your 9th house on the 23rd of February, you're probably going to have a clearer sense of what you need to do about that. It'll be a bit fuzzy probably for the month of January. Things might be a little bit strange, and you might have a need to revisit some things, like I said, especially from maybe October, as far as Mars is concerned. And so with that, and actually October was when Jupiter stationed retrograde as well, so that could also line up there. That was, I think, the 9th of October. So Mars going through your 9th house is going to bring you a trine to your sign and trine to the 5th house. So this can be very fortunate for you. It's just that Mars in the 9th house in the sign of Cancer is not going to necessarily bring you the greatest benefits. And you might find that you're acting from a place of emotionality or irrationality, or based on this feeling of mission that it's not complete, it's not entirely sure. So just step carefully at this time and be sure that whatever you do, whatever your ambitions are and the thing that you want to achieve is in line with what you really feel you need in this changing environment that you're moving into. So good luck with that, Scorpio. I'll see you in the next video. Sagittarius, this is happening in your 9th house. So the opposition from Mars in the 9th is to the Pluto in the 3rd. You're really here in this moment in time to get clear what is true in the highest sense of truth, in terms of the integrity of the 9th house, Mars in the 9th, showing up with a vision for what I have faith in, what I believe in, what is important to me, as well as what is true in terms of how you speak or what you're hearing, what is true in terms of conversation and exchanges of all kinds. 3rd house has to do with the verb and what we do with it. And when Pluto goes through there, we start to develop a gravitas. We start to become extremely intense around what we speak, how we speak. And certainly you're already pretty intense, Sagittarius. You can be quite strongly opinionated, and that's precisely because Leo rules your 9th house. So we also have Mars ruling the 5th. And so there may be something here about what you feel you need, either in terms of how you are, who you're becoming, and what you need to express, or around romantic interests. There might be something here about that as well. So be careful if you are having discussions with loved ones or family, because 3rd house is extended family as well. Mars can be the father, the 9th house represents the father, the way I look at it. And Mars can be contention with the father, especially in your chart, because Leo is the sign representing, ruled by the sun. And so the 9th house is where the sun is in its joy. It loves being there. And especially for Sagittarius, the 9th house is your natural house, and the sun is in its joy, or at least in the sign of Leo brings the joy. And Mars is there. So there may be something about the father. This can also be a dilemma that the father is facing, or there's something of a tension in terms of faith that can be, I no longer believe what my father believed, or I no longer subscribe to the same ideals or ideology, or I've got to change my ideology and I've got to renegotiate how I'm kind of communicating about these things. Now, Mars also rules your 12th as well as the 5th house. And so there's something maybe connecting you to spirit in a new way, or to your lineage, especially with all this activity in your 4th house, lineage or ancestry. And especially when Mars goes back into your 8th house on the 6th of January till the 18th of April, that's your 8th house of your family let's say, story or family baggage or the secrets of the family. It's an unconscious place in the chart, and where we see quite a lot of activity around what is hidden, the mysterious side of things. It can be money that you share with others, and maybe you need to grapple with that. Mars rules your house of loss as well. There can be something that you need to deal with that might be about an inheritance, but there's a struggle about that. And it can be something to do with children, meaning that there's something that needs to be dealt with around finances for the children or in terms of family obligations. Mars in the eighth house can also be tension within marriage, but it can also be passion, depends on your natal chart. Sexual passion, that's the house of intimacy, the eighth house. So when Mars goes into the eighth, we don't tend to have an easy time in intimacy unless it's a sexual intimacy. And then, of course, that Mars energy is more desirable, quite literally. So there you go. So Sagittarius, I make the most of this. Hopefully it's the latter for you, and I will see you in the next video. Capricorn, Mars is your exaltation ruler and it's retrograde. So there's something that you want, but it's not really working for you at this time. Mars is in Leo in the eighth house, opposing Pluto in the second. So there's some negotiations here that have to do with money, that have to do with your values, that have to do with the values you share with other people. You may be a little bit questioning that. You may be questioning also their integrity, or it's your integrity that you need to question, and you're needing to figure out what you have to do about this. Mars is also trining your North Node in the fourth, so that Mars rules your fourth house, which is all about family. It's all about your home, your lineage, the family of origin. Property as well. So maybe you're looking into buying a house or buying a property or having to deal with money around that kind of thing. Pluto going into your second can make you quite focused on money issues or quite focused on the material side of things, but also quite focused on your sense of self-worth and your values. And so there may be a really big change here. Pluto is trining the South Node that's just about to leave your 10th house after a year and a half. And so there you have there has been a big change in terms of what you thought was important, what your ambitions were, what your career was. It doesn't feel as important any longer. And here we're now starting to grapple with the things that we need to feel safe and secure for the next week before the North Node moves into the third house. And that's about choice. It's about what you need to choose and how you need to communicate around that, how you need to understand your role within your extended family or your capacity to teach and learn and communicate in different ways. It becomes very important. And since Jupiter is in your sixth house of work, this very, very likely has to do with work. It can also potentially have to do with health because, of course, Mars in the eighth, ruling the fourth, these are psychological houses. Jupiter is in the sixth house, but rules your 12th house, another psychological house. And so there may be something here about your mood or about how you're feeling or how you need to grapple with health issues. Both Mercury and Jupiter are out of their domicile, but they were the couple of weeks before, they were in a mutual exchange, let's say a week before. They're in a mutual generosity, we could call it now. So they're in each other's signs, but not bringing the best of both. So when Mars then moves into your seventh house, it's going to be quite a lot of engagement around relationships, around partnerships, business partners, and the people you have to connect to around business things. And so that's also an opportunity for you to review, especially the month of October and what that meant for you, perhaps also September, but more so October, where the degrees are going to be recovered by Mars going retrograde and then direct again. And Mars will be in your seventh house until the 18th of April. So you're going to have to, let's say, contend with a lot of energy around partnership, business partners especially. But Mars works really well for you, Capricorn. It is your exaltation ruler, and you tend to handle the energy of Mars well. What can happen is that with Mars in the seventh, you might feel that people are coming at you with a lot of emotionality, or they're coming at you with a lot of hassle. And this is an opportunity for you to clarify those things. So maybe clearing up things that are even older stuff from the month of October. So that's it. When Mars goes angular, when it's in the angular houses, it's very, very strong. And for Capricorn especially, it's very strong. And Mars is ruling your fourth. So beware of your own emotionality, beware of your own anger. If there are anger issues, that can cause health issues. Beware of that. Um, right. So good luck with all of that, Capricorn, and I'll see you in the next video. So Aquarius, this is happening in your house of relationships. So Mars in the house of relationship now opposes Pluto, who's moved into your first house. And there's maybe some tension here. It went into your house of relationships on the 4th of November and then retrograded on the 6th of December. So this is not new energy for you, but the polarity here, the tension between Mars and Pluto is exacerbating something or is highlighting something that has already been kind of pulling in the background, maybe already in the foreground. And so it might be something around business partnerships because Mars rules your 10th house of your career. It rules your 10th house of your social status and the way you show up in the world, your marital status even, and your ambitions and your drives. And then Mars also rules your 3rd house, which is your communication. It can be commerce as well, depending on what you do. And also extended family, siblings as well, cousins, etc. And where that 3rd house is your local space. So maybe there's something here that where you're realizing you need to change, or the people around you are no longer the people you want in your space, in your experience, and you're contemplating that, or you're coming into clashes with the people around you. You may feel that the people around you are coming at you quite strongly. Now, remember, you are an ideological sign, and idealism and ideological notions can cloud your judgment. They don't always, they're not always what you think they are. So be careful, because some of the arguments that you might get into with people, or some of the challenges that might be there with people, can be based on what you think you believe, what you think is true. And that stubbornness, these are the fixed signs, this Aquarius and Leo, that fixed sign stubbornness around faith and belief and what I know and whatever, it can cause you some disruption. So especially because Mars is ruling your 3rd house, beware of that. Don't engage in these kinds of diatribes and dialogues. So you want to be more in a place of listening. That's a good thing to do when you've got the North Node and Chiron in your 3rd house. Listen more, and then question, what do I know for sure? Like I said earlier, am I sure? And of course, Saturn in your 2nd may have you reflecting on your values. No doubt there's been a lot, and especially now in the month of January, lots of reflection on values. And so don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. Don't create disruptions where they're not needed or helpful. And then Mars moving into your 6th house will be in the house of your health and everyday work environment, as well as your job and the kind of day-to-day schedule. Now be careful, because when Mars goes, it's going to be in its fall in Cancer. It's in its exaltation in Capricorn, and therefore in its fall in Cancer. And so it's not going to give you great results. It can help up to a point, but it can also cause some trouble. And that's your house of health and your house of colleagues and co-workers and so on. So be careful how all of this is managed, because your willfulness, the 3rd house that Mars rules, and your ambition, your drive, can cause you some health issues when Mars goes through the 6th house. So if there was anything coming up in September, October, but especially in October, this would be a good time to really take that seriously and take action based on that. So Mars can help you when there are issues that need to be dealt with. When this is a Dastana house, of one of the challenging houses of the zodiac. So when Mars goes into that 6th house, it can show you that this is the way out. But when Mars is retrograde, it's not yet clear. So part of the way out, we know through this opposition, is you changing and the transformation of yourself. And so better to take that proactively rather than have someone force you to change in a way that you're not super comfortable with. So good luck with all that, Aquarius, and I'll see you in the next video. Pisces, Mars is in your 6th house and it's opposing Pluto in your 12th house. So there can be some realization around work or around your day-to-day and the things that you need to do in an everyday environment and that you need to change, that you're recognizing need to be reconsidered, or there's new action necessary around those things. And Mars in opposition to Pluto in the 12th can have you realize patterns of unconscious behavior, things that you're doing that you're really ready to give up. Now, Mars was in your 6th house already through November and December, from the 4th of November, and it's stationed retrograde on the 6th of December. So this is a long journey. It's not a new energy that you're grappling with, but that may have thrown up issues around health and issues around how you live your day-to-day life. And is that sustaining your health? The 2nd house is also about food and what sustains you in general. That can be money, your valuables, your possessions, your family, what else? Your beliefs, your values, your sense of your own self-worth. So this might be playing into that. So there may be a change of diet or a change of lifestyle or a change of values that you're applying now day to day based on this tension or based on this awareness of something has to change. This can be quite pragmatic because Mars also rules your 9th house of your vision and what you have faith in, what you believe in, what you sense your purpose is. So you feel like if I'm going to get to that higher purpose, I need to make this change. Whatever that is, it's going to shift on the 6th of January. Mars will go into your 5th house of self-expression. And that is a little bit easier to bear because it's also a water sign that's trinal to your 1st, 5th, and 9th. So it's ruling the 9th from the 5th, which is favorable to you. And so Mars in the 5th, although it's not in strong dignity, it can actually bring you some real creative endeavors, creative expression. It can bring you some connections with your children that can be stronger, or there's more activity around your children, or your children themselves are in some situation that needs some resolution. Not necessarily a problem, but you know, I'm just giving you all the ideas. And then Mars going through the 5th house is also especially connected to how you express your creative nature, how you express who you are. And that can be very helpful, very energizing kind of energy. And so when you have that Mars going from the 6th of January through till the 18th of April through your 5th house, it's an opportunity for you to really reflect on how you are and who you are and bring that into your everyday life from the 18th of April through the middle of June, when Mars goes through your 6th house again, and you get to figure out, okay, well, these changes that I'm making and this thing that I believe myself to be and how I want to express my values and how I want to express my sense of my higher purpose, now I know how to put that into my everyday life and overcome maybe obstacles that you thought were too big to deal with, that you weren't sure how to grapple with your everyday life. This can include your actual job, and it can include a structure that brings you better health, for example. All right, and since Saturn is also in your 1st house, that's going to help anyway, because Saturn is giving you a sense of strength and focus and maturity, that you feel like you're kind of ready to pull your socks up and get going with things. So good luck with that, Pisces, and I'll see you in the next video. And thanks to everyone, if you followed this far, thanks to all of you for being here. And of course, do all the usual things. Please like and subscribe and all the rest of that, because I don't monetize. And so I'm kind of shunted into a little corner. And if you can help me out by just flagging the video here and there, that would be wonderful. So thanks to all of you, and I'll see you in the next video.